Welcome to my free series of leadership and ritual facilitation videos. You can donate to help me offer more of these classes and write on these topics. There's more information in the video details below.
Yes, so I am a lead chaplain, and this allows me to assist pagans in not so common places. Like I can actually marry people. So, but I can do that just about anywhere. And sometimes they're not so common places. Sometimes it's not going to be in a nice, beautiful park. Sometimes it's going to be in odd places. Sometimes I get asked to go to hospitals and help people there. So, what are some things that I should be asking before I go to these places? I mean, with the hospital, it's obvious that I cannot have fire or bring toast or anything else like that. So, let's say, how would you tailor a full moon ritual for someone in a hospital or even a group of people who are in hospice or something like that who really, really wanted to have you there?
Well, so I'll offer up the caveat that I'm not the best person to ask for this because I have only a little bit of experience doing that. But what I'll do first is offer up the experience that I have, and then talk about a couple of other resources for that because there are folks who really know a lot about this. The two occasions that come to mind for me, I wasn't necessarily being asked to facilitate a ritual so much as do some trance work and do some energetic healing kinds of stuff, along with a little bit of pastoral counseling. So in both of those instances, I didn't really have, fire, fire's awesome. Fire is a great way to help people focus and trance out by looking at the fire, but obviously you don't have that in a hospital. What you do have usually is equipment making sounds, but those sounds can be trancey in and of themselves. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is that stuff that you think of as being really mundane is actually white noise that is going to get people into a trance state in a different way, or it can. That's just something to keep in mind. But so the one where it was more pastoral counseling and energy healing was somebody who was going through some medical stuff, and he just wanted clergy to come out and see him and maybe help him with some stuff, and he wanted to talk about how he felt about some things. So a lot of that was just listening to him talk about stuff, and making sure he understood he wasn't alone. And I remember that he was very uncomfortable. There was some very specific physical discomfort he was going through. And so I was with somebody else, and so we did some energy work on him, and we did some trance work. We took him on a journey, and we took him on a specific journey pertaining to healing what he was going through, and some of the other stuff that he had checked in about. So it was very much an on-the-fly custom trance journey just for him and what he was going through. And in the other instance, it was my father in the hospital. He was in a coma. My father has passed away since then, but at the time he had very severe sinus infections, and he had such a severe sinus infection that it actually infected his brain tissue, but you didn't know that could happen. Freaked me out when we finally learned out what happened. He had stroke-like symptoms, and it wasn't a stroke. It was, I want to say it's encephalitis is when your brain tissue is infected. So he was in a coma, and we didn't know if he was going to come out of the coma. And my dad was a very spiritual guy. He was always spiritually seeking. And so, this wasn't necessarily something he had asked me to do, but I felt that, he would have, he would have welcomed this. And so I went there, and I did kind of just an open-ended trance journey for him to, heal if that was possible for him to heal, and if the only healing that could happen was in death, for that to be peaceful, and for him to basically, because I know that people in comas can hear you. So it was basically taking him on a journey to resolve anything that was unresolved. And I, to kind of work my way through this, I have a couple of friends who work in, or had at that point, they did hospice work. They worked with the dying, and they talked about some of the things that they do when working with the dying. And what they specifically had told me is that a lot of people hold on to life even though they're in a lot of pain because they feel they can't let go. And so what I wanted for him was for him to understand that if he had to go, that it was okay. But I wanted to use drumming during part of this because I wanted to, the kind of trance work that this was when I was still doing ritual training at Diana's Grove, and like, it didn't occur to me that you could do the dual voice trance technique without a frame drum, because that was how if you're doing trance journey, there's a frame drum. And I was like, well, I've got to have a frame drum. So my friends who did this death work, they also do a lot of frame drumming. And they said, we call it rhythm assisted guided meditation. And so they said, you can, because he was in the ICU. So they said, you can just go talk to the nurse, see if it's okay. And, you can play it for them so that they know about how loud it is. And frame drum is pretty quiet. Frame drum is not a loud drum. So they said, if they're okay with it, then, you just tell them it's a, rhythm assisted guided meditation, and it's part of his spiritual tradition. And as it happened, they were like, yeah, whatever, we're busy, go do whatever. My backup plan was to play Peter Gabriel music on the little hospital CD player, because he was a big fan of Peter Gabriel. So that was my backup plan, was Peter Gabriel music. But so, sometimes hospitals are willing to make accommodations like that if you frame it in a way that they understand. People don't necessarily understand the word shamanic journey or trance journey, but they understand meditation. I'm going to lead a guided meditation. They sometimes understand that. Or, we're going to sit and pray together. It's working with language that people are more accustomed to. And the person who's a fantastic resource on doing any kind of hospital chaplaincy work is Selena Fox from Circle Sanctuary. I don't know if she's done any podcasts on it, but I know she does do podcasts. And she is an amazing resource for this kind of thing. I did at Pagan Spirit Gathering a few years ago. She did a minister's intensive specifically on doing kind of chaplaincy, more like the kind of the breadth of pastoral counseling, but it was specifically focusing on life transitions and crises. And she did, I think she did an entire day or entire 1 hour session just on working with hospitals and some of the constraints. And I have my notes on that, but it's better straight from Selena, because she does that work so often. But yeah, I mean, I think with hospital stuff, just the awareness that you're not going to be able to do everything that you normally would. You're not going to be able to have all the bells and whistles and the bling and the fire. And, it's working with what you have is, but that, you're also working with people who, because they're in a hospital, they may already be in an altered state. And so a lot of the stuff that you need to get a group of people that are in kind of mundane headspace, that you're in a very different situation with that, particularly if they're medicated, you're working with a very different scenario. So it's, the one thing that you always have is you have your voice and you have your body, and you have your energy and your intention with that. I would probably have to go get clearance from the nurses before I started doing any singing or chanting. And because if I'm doing energy healing on somebody, it's usually involving singing and chanting, or like didgeridoo, or well, I'd love to have a Shruti box, but I don't have one. So it's, you know, my healing work is very much musical. So that's something where I would definitely need to be like, hey, so here's what I'd like to do with this. Is that all right? Because I don't really, my chanting is not quiet. It's not, it's hard to chant quiet for me because I have a big.
Now, could this be a part where sometimes pre-recorded could work for you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we brought a whole stack of Peter Gabriel CDs and just left it at the hospital and just kept playing them in the little boombox because, you know, we just wanted him to have something that was, you know, for my dad, we just wanted him to have something that was comforting and you know, that he knew that we were there. So that's something where, yeah, I mean, you could that's a fantastic idea, you know, recording yourself doing a meditation, that you know, because you aren't going to necessarily be able to be there in the hospital with that person, you know, 24/7, but you could leave the CD of you doing the meditation. And particularly, like, I know that my friends that do the hospice work, one of the things that they mentioned a few times is like somebody would be going through a lot of pain, but they have a cap on how much morphine they could have. You know, there's only so much they can have, and then it's, anyways, they, you know, they can't have any more until, you know, a certain amount of time has passed. And they were able to help reduce people's pain by doing trance work. And these weren't pagans; these were just normal folks, but they would do adapted trance work where they would say, you know, and these are for people who are just insensate with pain. They are just, you know, writhing around in pain, and there's no help for them. There's, you know, there's no meds can be offered until it's time again. And I want to say that one of them talked about just taking the person's hand, or maybe it was touching their head, and I can't recall which, but it was, you know, just talking to them and just, can you take a breath into thinking about your favorite color? What is your favorite color? And can you imagine your favorite color? And it's there before you, and it's just like, it's, you know, it's not taking them on a spiritual journey per se. It's just helping them focus on something. That is, you know, and you're just using trance language. I have seen people use trance language to, like, I've done this to a certain extent. Like somebody who is really upset and having in a temper fit, like somebody who's just, you know, really, and you just, you know, first you talk to them kind of at the energy level where they're at, and then you just kind of slowly slow down what you're saying and let it become more rhythmic and more trancey. So you're starting where they are and you're bringing it down, and you're maybe adding in more long pauses in your speech. And it's, you know, you can use that technique to start out where they are and then bring them down. That's one of the reasons chanting is actually one of the, you know, not that I need to sell you on chanting, Terry, but one of the reasons chanting is such an effective trance technique is that it forces people to slow their breathing down, or speed it up, as the case may be. I use chanting a lot to manage my anxiety. When I am, you know, when I get one of those emails where, you know, or one of those, you know, letters in the mail where it's like, I owe what now? And, you know, my anxiety just, you know, I feel the creepy crawlies across my skin and my heart starts to palpitate. I'm like, and the adrenaline's going to hit now. Okay, there it goes. And I know I'm not going to be able to get anything focused done for a few hours after that. So, you know, part of this is, it probably falls under the category of both mindfulness as well as cognitive behavioral therapy, because I'm mindful of the fact that, like, okay, I know that I'm having these physical sensations right now and it's based on adrenaline and it's going to suck for a little while. I'm going to feel uncomfortable, but it's going to pass. So I just have to know that it's going to pass. So that's like the mental part of things. But then what I do with that is I will go and do something really physical where I'll kick up the tunes and I'll sing along with it. And the singing forces me to, you know, you're singing, and then your heart rate is actually slowing because of that, because you're controlling your breathing. Breath work is some of the most potent meditation work there is, and chanting forces you to do breath work. It's a very sneaky way of doing that. Plus you get music. So yes, I didn't think you'd have a problem with that. So yeah, that's something where you may be able to use chanting in instances like that. I think it really depends on the hospital and the setup and the context of that. And Selena's not necessarily Selena Fox is not. I don't know that she really has talked a whole lot about chanting when she did the workshop that I'm referring to. So I don't, I know that that's certainly that's a tool that I would probably try and use. But again, it depends on the context. So, did we make it through all your questions? Did we do it?
Yes, we made it through all the questions, all the extra questions. Only took what?
3.5 hours.
Sure, 3.5 hours.
Awesome. Well, you come up with more questions, and I'll come up with more stuff.
Okie dokie.
You're like, is that a challenge?
Well, like I said, I didn't actually go through all my notes because I felt like I was, sort of, monopolizing all your time. And writing down all my questions keeps me from stalking you on the internet, so it all works out.
Hey, I put myself out there on the internet because I like being stalked with ritual questions. I think I think that's fantastic, and it's awesome to talk about techniques that work, and and it gives me a lot of stuff to think about too, because this there's just so many different types of rituals out there and ways to do ritual, and what works for one group isn't necessarily going to work for another group, but there's some commonalities and some things that that work in general. So I think we can go ahead and close out our webinar in whatever form I end up uploading this, whether it's as one solid chunk or if I manage to break it up into pieces. We'll figure that out. But if you've made it this far, thanks for listening. And feel free to find me online and ask me ritual questions, because I really enjoy it. And we can do one of these one-on-ones where we're talking, or we can do something else. But if you have these questions, other people do, and asking them is really a service.
Yeah, and more than likely the unasked question, because I can guarantee you there's going to be someone who's going to think about it but never ever ask either you or me, is that where can I go to learn all of this from you? So if one of us is learning somewhere, then eventually we'll be able to pass along as much information as possible.
Absolutely.
If you have any questions about ritual facilitation or leadership for pagan groups, please feel free to contact me. I love questions, and I love writing articles or recording videos for actual issues that people are facing in the community. If this webinar is useful for you, please consider donating. It is my goal to make this education available for all, but to do that I have to pay the bills. I also have several books available, and there are links below under Show More, or you can contact me via my website or social media.